What is your understanding of the meeting between the two presidents, Xi Jinping and Donald Trump? Before going to that, let me play a clip in which they're just getting together, handshaking between the two presidents. It shows the tone and the atmosphere there.
Republic of China is
Good to meet you. Great pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you again.
很高兴再见。Me too.
And we're going to have a very successful meeting, I have no doubt.
我肯定我们今天会有非常成功的会议。
But he's a very tough negotiator. That's not good.
但是他是很强硬的谈判者哦，这不好。
We know each other well.
我们相互之间非常了解。
You see in the eyes of Donald Trump some sort of, I don't know, disappointment, some sort. He doesn't receive the way that he wants to greet, Xi, and he didn't get the feeling from Xi. But what's your understanding, Michael, when it comes to the meeting, and how do you find it? It was positive, negative, something between the two?
What is positive? It's positive that China resisted giving up to the, unlike Japan and Korea, that totally surrendered to Trump's demands. You'll notice in that clip you just showed, once Trump put his hand on Xi's back, Xi straightened sort of and put on his frozen smile. So you could see that that sort of told the picture right now. The buildup to all of this was that it was going to be a positive meeting, and I think that China orchestrated the whole meeting to enable Trump not to get angry and to do what he usually does, and says the meeting is a great success. And in fact, after the meeting, Trump said on a scale of 1 to 10, this was a 12. Well, what did China, as I look at what seems to have come out, it wasn't a 12 at all. It didn't really move forward. And indeed, the US plans were turned down. But Xi had sort of enabled Trump to get what he really wants, a public relations nice picture of increased soybean purchases. Okay, so this is not Brazil's harvest season. This is America's harvest season. 3 big ships are going to be carrying soybeans. So Trump can say, look, farmers, I've done something for you. And there are a couple of other things, modest concessions that China made that are very marginal. They're concessions that weren't a sacrifice. But what Trump had wanted was what essentially America has insisted from Russia. Let's have a ceasefire, and a ceasefire will, let's roll back everything to the way it was before the tariffs. They haven't worked. I realize that instead of isolating China, Trump's tariffs have isolated himself from China. And he said, well, let's go back. I'll get rid of the tariffs and we'll make things the way they were. Well, China's response is a lot of things have happened since you did the tariffs. For instance, we've done a mirror image. We've adopted your policy of national security really has to play a role in our trade policy. And we've imposed national security constraints on our exports of raw materials and other gallium and other elements, so that we're not going to export anything that can be used by your military at all. Nothing was discussed about that. There was Trump says, well, they are going to relax some of their rare earth exports, but it turns out that what China, according to the reports here from Bloomberg and others, China said, yes, we will relax our exports of what you need for rare earths, but you'll have to relax your controls. Number one, you'll have to remove your constraints on designated companies in China, your list of companies that Americans can't deal with and cannot import any products with products of these companies, like Nexperia in Holland, that the Dutch government confiscated from China at U.S. demands, that has paralyzed the automobile car battery industry from Germany all the way to the rest of Europe. The U.S. will have to remove its constraints on exporting high-end computer chips from NVIDIA, the very high end. It can only export the low uncompetitive computer chips that the Chinese are now already cutting the NVIDIA market for by, I think, 75% by producing their own. So these are the conditions for all of these nice agreements that Trump has talked about are not going to be met by the United States, because Trump has surrounded himself with anti-China hawks. They're not going to agree to anything. So Trump did most of the talking, and Xi just had his usual enigmatic smile. And afterwards, there's no mention of any TikTok deal. No mention at all, except that the U.S. would roll back tariffs in exchange for China not selling drugs that could be used to make fentanyl. But the U.S. pharmaceuticals industry is dependent on China for its exports of chemicals and pharmaceuticals, as the U.S. computer industry is dependent on rare earth. So it's really unlikely that China had to really give up anything at all. There may be just one or two chemicals, and it'll continue to completely dominate the U.S. market, and the U.S. dependency on China will continue. So China has not given anything, and usually there's a memorandum of agreement, and the memorandum of agreement isn't really a promise, because agreements have to be signed and approved by Congress and go through a long political process. No agreement at all. Nothing, only Trump saying the meeting was great. Well, he always says the meeting is great. And when there is a press release of the meeting, the U.S. press release is very different from the press release of the other side of the meeting, whether it's Russia or China or whoever. So China has been closed mouth, and there's no indication that it's given up anything at all. So that's sort of a common denominator of Trump's meetings, where the Dow Jones is up, as it's been up every single day. NVIDIA says, oh, that's great. Our shares are up. We're going to sell more to China. But it also said we need the Chinese market. If Trump does not allow us to sell the very highest, most productive rare chips to China, then we won't have the money to engage in the research and development to stay ahead, and we'll fall behind. That was what the head of NVIDIA said yesterday at the meeting. So it looks like China has maintained its control. It really hasn't given anything except some a few marginal twists that look good, like the soybeans and the drugs. I don't think the U.S. is going to, or Europe is going to, remove the sanctions against Chinese purchase of the Dutch chip engraving machinery, and it probably won't even do anything about Nexperia. The Germans have said they're willing to close down their auto industry and just live with it, as Germans do. So that's basically the situation. I think it was a win for China in resisting the surrender that Korea and Japan gave.
Richard, your take.
Well, as I read the history of these sorts of agreements, memos, even when they do go through the political process and become so-called legitimate, binding, and all the rest, that they always have two qualities that people forget. The first quality is the world is finite and everything changes, and whatever you agree to today can be unagreed to one way or another tomorrow. The second thing is that there are always unspoken agreements that coexist with whatever is spoken or written about in press releases. The two of them, for example, may have come to some agreement about TikTok, but that includes an agreement not to talk about it for the next 3 months or the next 6 months, or God knows what they might have done. They might have changed what the balance will be between the portion that basically China holds on to and the portion that the Americans have some say in, because that was being negotiated. And obviously that wasn't easy to resolve, since they've been at it for at least 6 months, if not longer, and can't reach a resolution, which is why, as each deadline for a resolution approaches, Mr. Trump says we're going to extend it another 3 months and stuff like that. Those are signs, not that you need them, but those are signs that beneath the surface, other things are going on. So I'm a little nervous. I understand what Michael just did, and it makes perfect sense. I don't want to hang too much on how things appear in the moment of the meeting. Michael is absolutely right. I've never seen Mr. Trump come out of a meeting in which he doesn't think he's just done the greatest job imaginable, won the greatest results one could hope for. I mean, it's clearly pathological. It had nothing to do with what actually happened. Now, having said that, I want to go back and quote Michael last week, back to all of us. Last week, or it might have been 2 weeks ago, Michael went through a very, very good rendition with humor of what had happened with the deals made between the United States and South Korea on the one hand and Japan on the other, in which the flim-flam that we've been watching for the last 8 months was exercised. Remember, you hit them with a high tariff, and then you offer, in return for lowering the high tariff to something less, a deal, but that it requires the commitment of hundreds of billions of dollars, say over the next 5 or 10 years, to be invested in the United States. A deal quite similar to what was done with Ursula von der Leyen, from Europe. The same deal will lower the tariffs a little bit from what we had said, but you have to promise. In the case of Europe, the promise was larger, 750 billion in energy purchases plus 700 billion in investment. Okay. That was outrageous. And it was so outrageous that one had to ask the question that one normally kind of puts aside: what's really going on here? Did they really commit? How in the world, just between you and me and the lamppost, how do the European politicians commit to stand in front of their own people and explain that they can't sustain their free education or their free transport or their subsidized housing or their national health service because they don't have the money, since they're spending a fortune on American liquefied natural gas and investing in America? This is political suicide. Even the Europeans, who seem to be very good at that particular activity, even they wouldn't go that far. So my suspicion, listening to Michael lay it all out, was that these people are making agreements having absolutely no intention whatsoever of doing this. They have figured out, and I'm going to quote Michael again, they have figured out what Michael just said about Xi Jinping. He stands there, he has, if I may quote him, an enigmatic smile. And, he lets Mr. Trump do what he likes to do, which is appear to be in charge, appear to be having a great time, and appear to be successful at whatever he set out to do. Let him do it. Who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. Mr. Trump won't be there 3 years from now. And a lot of things can happen in those 3 years, not to speak of what happens later. Sure, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then when it comes to doing it, there'll be a delay, there'll be a problem, there'll be an unforeseen aspect to it that requires new negotiations, on and on. That's what you do when it is not politic to say right in his face, no, because you don't know what Mr. Trump may do when he's pressed into a corner. So you don't. You've discovered this is the best way. It's very important not to aggravate the fellow. And if you need an object lesson, just watch the interactions between Mr. Trump and the Canadians. There you'll see a nice example of why it is wiser not to push back very much, because you're going to get hurt in that process. That's my reading. That the South Koreans thank ICE, because that absurd raid by ICE of the South Korean factory in Georgia allowed the South Koreans to back away from what they had agreed to. The Japanese must be fuming as they watch South Korea on the one hand and China on the other not give to Mr. Trump even what they've been willing to give. It puts Japan in a very, very bad light, along with Europe. So that's my take. My take is, because it isn't working real well, and because if I'm informed correctly, there is actually a serious chance that the Supreme Court will somehow invalidate some of the tariff business of Mr. Trump's. He has to prepare for the very bad look that will give to everything he's done. So he needs some successes. And so he has to go to Asia, because the great success he had a few weeks ago has unraveled on him. And now he's going to shore it up with a visit and lots of photo ops. Other than that, I don't think much has changed.